Alrighty, folks. Good morning, afternoon, evening to you. Welcome to Google Classroom 101. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Randy Sakes. Randy has nearly 15 years of experience in planning, deploying, and supporting technology systems within education. This includes desktops, servers, mobile devices, and a variety of platforms. He is currently the District Network Manager for Glencoe School District 35 and works to ensure the infrastructure supports the educational goals of the organization. He has deployed Google for Education in 2 different school districts, presented a variety of conferences throughout the United States, is a Google Education trainer, and enjoys the outdoors, photography, and ice hockey. Today he'll be sharing with you some of the ways he has seen teachers use Google Classroom to further extend their students' learning environment into the digital realm. With that said, I turn it over to Randy.
All right. Well, thank you, Jared. And let me say thank you to everyone that is taking the time to be here. I know it's a Saturday. It's who knows what time wherever you are, because I know this conference is hitting everywhere across the globe. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of start out with telling a little bit of a story behind what our school district saw and how we used Google Classroom. What was interesting about this is when we started all of this, it was roughly around March of 2014. And at that time, we just began utilizing Google for Education in our school district. We wanted to find ways that we could have our teachers work in a more engaging and really a more authentic online environment. And in March, what we found when we were looking at ways to streamline the class process was spreadsheets and add-ons and comma-separated files that, for our tech users and the teachers that were comfortable with technology, wasn't going to be a hurdle. They were going to be willing to adopt and try out this technology. But when we looked at giving some of our teachers that need a little more help with technology an 8-page PDF to show you how to distribute documents, wasn't really going to cut it. So we saw at Classroom at this point, and it was really an authentic, a great way we were able to have our teachers be excited about using technology. And what was great about this is it allowed them to adopt and utilize these tools in a lot more of a fluid way. Today, what we see are about half of our teachers within our various classrooms utilizing Google Classroom with their students. And really, it's just helped them so much with utilizing, adopting, and transitioning to an online environment. There's a session that's going to come up in about an hour that's going to dive into Classroom a little bit more. So I'm going to try to focus here on just telling you some of the stories that we've had our teachers use and just highlight some of the features to get an understanding on how they're used. I will definitely suggest if you're looking at utilizing Classroom a little bit more, take some of the ideas you hear here, some of the other sections, put them together with the other component coming up, and we should be good to go. So when you hit into Classroom, you can access it through any web browser. The great part about this is now there's additionally mobile devices that have extra capabilities and features than where they sat a week ago. This shows that this product is constantly evolving. It's adapting to the needs that we see. What we have here is classroom.google.com, and kind of like the first day of class, we see a blank chalkboard because we haven't enrolled in any classes as of yet. I want to put this slide in here just to keep in mind, and you'll be able to access a copy of these slides in the presentation reference link on the page. If you have someone responsible that works with setting up your environment, this link will help with correcting any issues that may arise from teachers or students selecting the wrong user object. That means if a teacher were to select that they were a student, they might not be able to create a class. So this is one of those reference slides just to have there and that we can take a look at later. The next view that I want to pull up here is what we see with the various presentation cards. And the slide up here shows a link of 4 enrolled classes. 2 of them I am a student in, and the other 2 I'm a teacher. A quick view that you can tell the difference between these is the teacher cards, which are the 2 on the left. And by teacher cards, those are the classes where I'm enrolled as a student. We see the instructor name, and we also see a little badge icon that indicates the image of the instructor. The two classes that you'll see on the right show me the count of students, 5 and 1 respectively. Additionally, what's neat about this is you get a great little assignment view. And in all 4 of these classes, we decided not to assign any homework this weekend, or we got ahead of the game and completed all of our assignments, so we see that there's none upcoming. Again, it's just that quick view that you can really do to get people engaged. The next area that we spent some time with when working with our teachers on this was the idea of creating classes and how you take all the variety of students you see and you can kind of compartmentalize them and put them together into a grouping that makes sense and is easy to work with. As we worked with our teachers, what we found out was we asked them, what are the various ways that you see your students throughout the day? And if you can find this and kind of look to translate the brick and mortar physical classroom into a digital environment, it made creating those classes really, really easy for them. So what this meant is for some of our teachers at our lower grade levels, our school district is a K-8 school district, we found that at the 4th grade level, for example, we were able to just make one Google Classroom for the teacher. And within that class, they could go ahead and create assignments for history or math or reading or language arts. As we moved through the grades and the specialties, we saw that the art teacher, for example, they don't really have students that are assigned to them. Instead, they see a variety of other teachers' students. So they might go ahead and make 6 classes. Obviously, as you get up to some of the higher levels, you work with content area. You work with maybe 7th grade science. What you see with that is not necessarily the best organization by creating one class that has 120 students in it. And here you can look to create these by possibly periods, again, depending upon how the students see you. One of the more unique ways we actually saw one of our teachers use this was to differentiate within their classroom. Instead of having a Google Classroom for their class, they found the best use was to just have it based upon reading and writing groups. So their classroom environment was a class for the red group, one for the blue group, and the students were able to work on differentiated, focused assignments based upon their skill levels. And it was just really a neat way to see how this tool was able to go ahead and help with fostering a transition from the physical to the digital classroom. When you're a teacher and you connect in, there's an option along the top where you saw a couple of slides ago, it said create your first class. When you create a class, you see this little option and you can specify a name as well as a section. The class name is going to be required, the section is going to be optional. When you're ready to go, you can click the create button and you're going to be taken directly into your class. The first thing when you hit into a class that you'll see is the banner. And the banner that sits behind this it just gives you a feel for the classroom image. This class we see here, it's called Google Classroom 101. It has me as the teacher. And there's 2 options. I can select a theme, and that's going to let me select some predefined images for this class. Or the other option here is to upload a photo. And what's neat about it is if you work with uploading a photo, you can really customize and make this classroom a lot more engaging and dynamic. If we think about a class that might be on U.S. history, as you work through the various time periods that you see within the U.S. history units, you can transition your banner to be something from the Revolutionary War over to the Civil War, go to World War I, World War II. In the lower grade levels, you can do something where to create class ownership and a sense of community, maybe your banner image is the class image that has all the students enrolled in the class. And finally, we all know that students love working with technology. Some of the grade levels, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and maybe have a class job for that week. That student gets to pick the banner. It sounds simple, but it's really a neat way that you can get students engaged in working with the class. There's 3 main parts of your classroom. And again, the session that's coming up probably now in about 45 minutes, we'll dive in depth a little bit more into these. They center around the stream, students, and about the class. And what we see in the stream, the screenshot to show you, is a couple of distinct areas. we get a quick little view on the top left that shows us our upcoming assignments. There's the capability to show deleted items or to hide deleted items. And this is kind of useful if you have some students that don't necessarily take digital citizenship in the best way. You can go ahead and show what they've decided to post and then thought this wasn't a good decision. There's an option for class code. So rather than you build out the class as a teacher, you can invite the students in. And that's a nice, really quick workflow. I'm going to talk a little bit about announcements and assignments in a few slides. So I'm going to kind of run through that piece. The students area. This is the version of the digital class roster. And what we'll see here is one student's currently enrolled in the class. We have the capability to invite additional students by clicking the invite button and putting in their information from our Google for Education domain. In addition to this, this is an area where you can set different permissions for the students within your class. And it's interesting to think about the different ways that these permissions translate into what we see in a classroom. For some of our classrooms that are a lot more engaging, students can post and comment. That's the equivalent of, at the beginning of any class, anyone, the teacher or the student, being able to go up to, say, the podium and start a discussion for the day. Another option that fits some other classrooms is to say that only the teacher can post. And this is some of your more traditional classroom environments where the teacher raises a question, poses it to the class, the students raise their hand to respond. The students don't necessarily create their own discussion, they just participate in the one that's going on. And the final option is to make it so that only the teachers can post. That's going to make this a very announcement-style classroom, and really focus it a lot more on disseminating information than sharing and collaborating back and forth. As I mentioned earlier, you can go ahead, you can invite students. If you have 160 students that you see, that's going to be kind of tedious. Instead, when you create these classrooms, what you can do is you can share out a class code that makes it really easy for the students to go to Classroom, select the plus symbol, and then be able to just enter in the class code. An interesting point here is when you think about all the different ways you interact with your students, you interact with them by class. And there's a neat capability here when we're working within a class to select multiple students by selecting the checkbox next to their name and working on an action like removing them or emailing them directly. When you think about emailing a student, you probably don't think it's a huge time waster. I go to a different device, I go to a separate tab, I go to Gmail, I type in the address, I compose a message. This way, when you're focused on a class, you can kind of think of this as a way to focus, really, just on that one class at that moment. If I need to email Johnny, or in this case, student 1, to ask them or send them a reminder, I click the checkbox next to their name. Under the Actions menu, I select Email, and this automatically generates a new tab with the student as the recipient. I know one of the questions that we saw was seeing if the deck will be available. We'll go ahead and you should be able to access these slides under the session materials from the main Google page. So I'll post a link to that later on if we need to. Kind of the last area here is the About section. And this is really the information about your class. On the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see a little option that now says Invite Teacher. And this was a huge request amongst the education community to the Google Classroom team. And they listened, they implemented it, and now you have the capability to invite more than one teacher to be able to host a class. This is great for team teaching, if you co-teach with someone else. I know in our school district, we have teachers occasionally that had extended absences. And rather than have to create shared logins that require an extra step, or to share login information that isn't possibly the most secure, we can invite another teacher so that they'll be able to go ahead and collaborate in the class the same way as the main instructor. Working within a class, and I think this is where we see kind of the bread and butter of what draws people to Classroom, what really makes it stand out, and what really helps with adjusting the classroom flow. There's two main aspects in a classroom. There's announcements and there's also assignments. And really the main difference behind announcements and assignments is the fact that an assignment allows you to select a due date and it has something that's going to be required to be turned in. In this case, we're going to go look at a quick announcement. I've posted one that says welcome to Classroom 101, so thank you for everyone for being here today and listening to this. And what we see now, again, one of those features where we hear feedback from educators that gets passed along to the education team at Google, and it gets implemented into Classroom, is to save drafts. So now I, as an instructor, during planning periods, can go ahead and post and create maybe the announcements for the week, and then be able to take those and submit them online when it's time to submit those and to send them along. So you'll see that that little area had the draft spot highlighted in red. When we go back to announcements, and this is now that spot where we're looking at attaching an item or working with grading an item, we'll see that within the assignment area, we have the spot here where we've selected the due date, May 5th. We see the various items we can attach. An item from our computer, something from Drive. We have the capability down here to attach a YouTube video, and then also external links. When I mentioned earlier creating classes can be helpful, the great part about an assignment is you can post it to more than one class. So in this example, we have Google Classroom 101, where this assignment is going to be posted. If I also wanted to post the same assignment to Classroom 201, I can select the checkbox next to the item. One of the other aspects we want to keep in mind is working with the various ways we can attach items from Drive into the class. And again, working on that idea of sharing and kind of looking at telling the story behind how we've seen our teachers use this. In this example, for this assignment, we had the assignment called Writing Assignment 1 and an assignment prompt attached to it. And when we attach this item, we have the various options of what students can do. The first example, students can view the file. This is handy if the item I was attaching from Drive, for example, was a rubric. I want students to be able to see and know how they're going to be graded, so as they work on this assignment, they can easily see their expectations. The next option that says students can edit file. This is good if you're looking at maybe an assignment that has the entire class participating, and each student needs to add a question for the test review that's going to happen next period. All the students then have the capability to contribute and edit that one file. The last option, make a copy for each student. This one's really useful because if you think about what this looked like in a paper classroom, you took a stack of papers to the photocopier and hoped that someone didn't leave it jammed and walk away and not tell anyone. And you ran off 30 copies of your document. You took that back to class. You passed it out to all the students and said, this is due tomorrow. Of course, at the end of the day, you probably walked around the classroom and you saw 2 or 3 left behind. So now that meant that there's a couple of students that didn't have that assignment. Of course, along with this, the next day rolls around, everyone passes the papers forward, passes them to the left or the right, they get turned in to get graded. Instead, this entire process, this entire workflow, can be as simple as selecting an item from Drive, selecting Make a Copy for each student, and clicking Assign. As soon as that happens, that assignment now has a copy for each student. It gets automatically put into their Drive, and it's easy to access. And that's the little section that appears there. Keep in mind when you're working with these assignments that the only time you'll see the option to create a copy for each student is currently when assigning. So if by mistake you realize, oops, I didn't select the option to create a copy for each student, really the best bet behind that is going to be to go ahead and just delete the assignment, recreate it, and kind of work with that option. One of the questions that it looks like popped up was if students like Classroom. And for our example, we have students currently in 4th through 8th grade that are using this in various ways to submit assignments. And what they love about it is that it's easy. I'll show in a couple of slides here what the assignment view looks like for a teacher and a student once they're working within the stream. Right now, another question I know that's come up is, can students, teachers from outside of our domain be invited into Classroom? And where we see this some of the times is when you have a domain for teachers and a domain for students. And there is the capability to go ahead and add trusted domains so that you can work with maybe a subdomain of your students working within that environment. Some of the other questions I know we'll get to in a couple of minutes. I'm going to jump over to the next slide to kind of show what the assignments look like within the stream. And what I pulled up here are just 2 screenshots that show the assignment from the teacher view, which is up on the top, and the student view on the bottom. On the top view, we get a quick little heads-up list that, as a teacher, they can look at it and say, all right, I know 9 students have completed this, 1 is not done. And just in a quick 3-4 seconds, you know the status of that assignment. It's a lot better than having to go through a stack of papers in an inbox to flip through and see which student is missing. And we see on the bottom here is the writing assignment number 1. It's due tomorrow. Me as a student, I know this because it says, hey, due tomorrow. What's great about this is the streamlining, as I mentioned. When a student clicks on open on this assignment, they're taken directly into the assignment where they can add an item to it, such as something else they have in Google Drive, a link, uploading a file. The main area that we've worked with this, and this has been a little more prevalent in our lower grade levels, our 3rd, 4th, some of our 5th grade classes, is stressing to the students to go ahead and create a document or a presentation directly from this assignment. And what's great about this is the power it provides. As soon as I, as a student, were to go through this and select Create, Document, a new document in Drive gets automatically created, and it's going to be named Writing Assignment Number 1 - Student Name. The document automatically gets attached to this assignment, and right off the bat, it's shared with my teacher. And if you've ever worked on some project or some assignment on your own, and you thought you were completely on pace, and you've handed it in, and you found out I was completely wrong on the direction that I worked on this assignment, this is a quick way that that teacher can really have the insight into the student work, be able to click on something really quick and be able to see the status. Once you work within a document, here we're going to see the ability to turn the document in. On the left-hand side, when you've worked on this and this is your project, it's ready to go, you click the Turn In button, and that assignment now gets set over to the teacher and marked as complete. Now, since the student does own the document, they're always going to have that capability to change it a little bit, so they can unsubmit a document if they realize maybe this wasn't their best work. You will see a revision history, not only in the document, which is powerful, but also within Classroom to see the submission history, when that item was marked in, when it was marked out. The other item we have is maybe you have an assignment that doesn't necessarily have a document in it. This might be a Google form that's an assessment survey for your students. By having the capability to mark as done, that means that I can have this be a little more of a status check and not require something to be turned in. I know that was early on something we saw with our own teachers that submit informal surveys to the students, and they want them to go ahead and provide some of their feedback. You can go ahead and work on it that way and still have that visibility to know that the assignment is indeed completed. I mentioned the power of assignments. Classroom really gives you a nice way that you can go ahead and have a digital assignment notebook. I have 2 different views here because me as an individual, I'm a teacher and I have assignments, which you'll see along the left. And as a student, I can be a teacher and a student in a class, and those will appear on the right-hand side. These are stacked normally on your display, but just for the sake of fitting them into the slide, I kind of broke them up. What's really cool about this is from the student view, when I click on under Enrolled Assignments, I see all of my assignments grouped by class, when they're due, and the ones I need to work on. As a teacher, I really love this view because it's such a great way to view a lot of information in a very fast period of time. As a teacher, when I click on the assignments, I see a list. Here we're showing all of our classes. There is a drop-down that you can filter to show this for only specific classes. You get a list of the assignments, the due dates, and the status. So very, very quickly, I can go ahead and take a quick look and know, do I need to go and grade assignments for this class? The whole aspect of grading is really another area that we see Classroom help streamline our teachers. As I mentioned earlier, you'll see here the option for this specific assignment shows the student got a grade of 100. On the upper right corner, there's a point area, and you can select this to choose some default point values. You can also enter in your own at a custom level. In this view for this assignment, we have someone else that attached a video, and that's what they're turning in. It's late because it was due May 5th, and they just turned it in. And that capability to work on the grade. I have two more quick points to run through, and then we'll take, I know some of the other questions, look at those. Working with grades. The student view shows me the grades I've received on my assignments. So again, going back to that assignment view, there's an area appearing at the top that's to do. There's another area that shows complete. And here I'll be able to take a look and see that I got 100 on this assignment. When I jump back into the teacher view, the last option that we see here is the ability to download the information for this assignment or all the assignments. And all the assignments gives you a way to take everything you've graded within Classroom, compile it, and have it into one file to easily transition. So with that, that's kind of hopefully that quick what you can do with Classroom. Again, there's a session I know that's coming up in a little bit, about half an hour from now, that goes a little more into the how you can do it and some of the features. I'm going to look at some of the questions that popped up. So first off, let me say thank you to everyone that attended this on the Saturday to take your time. If there's any questions I don't get to, I'll look at the Q&A stream and post some of those responses later on today. So again, thank you. Feel free to stick around if you want to hear some of the questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you again for attending. One of the questions came up is with students posting videos to Classroom. I'm not 100% sure on if they can come up as a comment, but if your students have the capability to create an announcement, you can go ahead and they could create an announcement and attach a video to it. That can be a video that might be on their computer. If you're a Google for Education customer, take advantage of the free space that you have unlimited within your Drive, and put it in a Drive, click it in, and submit it that way. I think Laura had a question about public libraries, and if you want to throw a little bit more information on that question, let me know what area it's around. I'll look at putting that in place. And I think that seems to be a pretty good set of some of those questions. Again, as I mentioned, I'll take a look at the other ones that appear. And I want to thank Jared for taking the time to kind of do the moderation and pull that information together. It's definitely helpful, and I appreciate the time. What you should be able to also find is on the main education page, you'll get a link for all the sessions. You should be able to access those. That'll pick up the resource page. If not, I have my, I'm going to jump over to my first slide here. If not, if you can't find those and you need some help, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on Google+. I'll go ahead and send those links along. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we'll keep on learning and teaching.